Revenge films.
When I was a college student, I was dating my girlfriend named Karen. I was head over heels for Karen. And even though we were still in college, I was already thinking about a future with her. I was already planning on starting my own business as soon as I graduated college. And by that point, the odds were already in my favor. When the business does well, I wanted to spend that on making Karen happy. That's why, as soon as we graduated college, I'm going to start my own business. Mark my words, within 2 years, I'm going to have results, so that I can make you happy for the rest of your life, I declare to you. However, not long after that, Karen cheated on me. And to make matters worse...
What do you mean, start your own business? There's no way you would ever succeed. That's why I've decided to go out with Scott. He has a very high salary. He buys me all of the brands that I love and even takes me to expensive restaurants all the time.
Scott was a guy who was always picking on me and looking down on me in college. At the time, Scott had gotten into a top company thanks to his parents' connections, and Karen decided to switch over to him at the same time. I was kicked to rock bottom, and between my anger and my sadness, as soon as I graduated, I dove headfirst and put my all into my work. Then, just as I expected, I was able to produce results very quickly. The system that I developed, in the blink of an eye, was being targeted by multiple large businesses. And then, 2 years later, just as I vowed, I was able to celebrate huge successes in my work. Karen must have heard that from somewhere, and suddenly, I got a phone call from her one day.
It's been a while, Oscar. Hey, I heard that you reached a buyer status with an annual turnover of $10 million and retired. That must be amazing that you get so much of an income and just get to do whatever you want now.
2 years of not hearing a peep from her, and to then call me out of nowhere and immediately talk about money? I was disgusted. I was wondering why you were calling after all these years. But what are you saying?
What do you mean what? Obviously, you're finally gonna marry me. Getting to live without working and doing whatever we want, it's perfect.
Huh?
Huh? Come on, you don't remember? You promised that you would definitely succeed within 2 years. And when the time came that you would finally come to pick me up.
That wasn't a promise, it was a declaration. But either way, you cheated on me and destroyed all of that. We broke up a long time ago. Plus, I haven't retired. I'm still working properly.
What? Really? Well, whatever. That doesn't seem to change the fact that your annual turnover is in fact $10 million. While you're at work, I will go to the spa and go shopping so that I can be beautiful for you. I mean, look, you even remembered my phone number, didn't you? That must mean you were waiting for me to come back someday.
What kind of nonsense is that? I was just so busy with work that I forgot to delete your number. That's it. You and I have no relation to each other whatsoever anymore. So don't call me anymore. I hung up and I blocked Karen's number on the spot. However, a few days later, after I had gone to a client for a meeting and was on my way back to the office, there was some kind of commotion outside. I was wondering what could possibly be happening, so I went to the center of the fuss and found none other than Karen in the middle.
Hey, let go of me! Do you even know who I am? I'm the CEO's future wife!
What are you saying? Please, leave the office premises immediately!
Shut up! I'm gonna tell Oscar and make sure you get fired! Because you decided to speak to the CEO's future wife like this.
What are you doing?
Oh, Oscar, perfect! Listen to this. This security guy is trying to kick me out of the company. Can you fire him right now?
Are you kidding me? What are you doing coming all the way here? I already told you that you and I have no relation to each other anymore!
What do you mean you have no relation? You wouldn't contact me, so I came all the way here for you.
I'm very sorry. Please, bring this woman over to the administrative office. Depending on the situation, please be prepared to call the police. Yes, sir!
Hey, where are you taking me?
What are you doing in my company? I already told you over the phone that we are done.
Excuse me? You finally succeeded, so I'm telling you that I will marry you now. I came all the way here just for you. What kind of attitude is that?
After betraying me like that back then, what gives you any right? Plus, I'm already married. Even if I were dead, I would never marry you.
What? What did you just say? Did you just say you're married?
After you and I broke up, who I dated or married is none of your business.
Of course it is. Are you kidding me? What about those brand name bags and living in the highest apartment building in the middle of the city? Those were all my rights. Who on earth did you get married to?
To Heather.
Huh? Who the hell is Heather? Wait a sec, you mean that Heather from our class in college? That loser with no friends?
Stop talking about my wife like that. Heather is extremely kind, and she's an amazing mom to our baby.
Baby? You even had a baby? Are you kidding me? Like, you were supposed to get married to me. What are you doing marrying that loser like that? I can't believe that loser is living a celebrity lifestyle instead of me. There's no way. You need to break up with her immediately.
What are you saying? You have absolutely no grounds to stand on to say anything like that. I get to live with my son and my wife, and I'm very happy. That's why I also told you that I don't want to hear from you ever again.
Oh, I know. You're just trying to get back at me for dumping you. So you came up with that little lie, right? After that, you're planning on surprising me by telling me you love me, right?
Oh, what the hell are you saying?
Because it doesn't make any sense. You love me.
Then here, look at this.
What is it?
This is the interview I did on TV the other day. If you watch this, then you'll know that I'm not lying and that I'm married with a family. The video I showed Karen was an interview, asking me the secret to my success when I started my business. They filmed part of that at my house, so my home and my family were in it.
What? Where is this? There's no way this is America.
I bought my house overseas, and I left America in charge with my subordinate that I trust. I go back and forth whenever they need me.
What is this mansion? With such a huge yard and you even have a dog? How dare you? This is all mine. None of this is for that other woman. Give it back.
Karen finally lost it in the administrative office and was throwing such a big tantrum that the security guards had to hold her down while we waited for the police to collect her. Even while being shoved into the police car,
your money is all mine. It belongs to me, not that loser girl.
She continued screaming as they closed the door and drove off. Even back at the police headquarters, she continued her tantrum, saying that I was just blind to my true love, that I would go back to her, and that she had the rights to all of my assets. Even though my family was far away overseas, I was worried she might do something, so I called Karen's parents and had them come get her. That's when I found out the unbelievable. It turns out that Karen was living at home with both of her parents, but she had gotten hooked on buying large amounts of brand name items, and she was in debt well into the thousands. However, she hadn't been paying off her loans, so when the collection letter came to her house, her parents found out and said, "What the hell are you thinking of, buying all of these things? You need to do whatever it takes and work however many jobs and pay this all back yourself!" Right around that time, one of our mutual acquaintances just happened to see me when I was back in town for a business trip, and she must have told Karen as a point of conversation that I was apparently really successful in work, and that's how Karen found out. That must have been when she remembered the past, and she thought this meant I had come back for her, and that's why she got in touch with me. From that moment, her head was far up in the clouds, and apparently, she had been telling everyone around her that she was going to marry me and become a celebrity. I later heard that she was also bragging that I would pay off all her debts and that she wasn't worried about it. Karen's parents got down on their knees to apologize to me and said, "We're going to take our daughter to get professional help. We're also going to have the police file a restraining order so that she doesn't come anywhere near you or your family ever again. We're so sorry." As they apologized, they handed me an envelope as an apology full of stacks of cash. However, this had nothing to do with their parents, and Karen was no longer a child. So I felt I couldn't accept it. But they said, "We're just fronting that money right now. Both the debt and the inconveniences she has caused you. She'll be working and paying it all back herself." In that case, I felt like I could take it. For what it's worth, that guy Scott, who was the reason Karen dumped me in the first place, he may have gotten a job at a major company through his parents' connections, but he was so useless and dumb with a terrible work ethic that he was fired less than 6 months into his job. However, in the beginning, he was still living a luxurious life thanks to money from his daddy. But even after that, he wasn't showing any signs of working. So his parents got fed up and they disowned him, cutting him off from any support as they kicked him out of the house. As for Karen, she's going through treatment at a psychiatrist while thrown into a job at her parents' friend's cleaning company. She was kicked out of the house and is living in the run-down dorms as she works day and night, cleaning office buildings and casinos by day and clubs at night. She's cleaning around the clock, and all of her salary except for the bare minimum needed to live are taken to pay off her debts. She's getting exactly what she deserves. While she's at it, I hope she cleans up her personality too.
My name is Rachel Harrison, and I work at this one company. The CEO is an amazing person, and I have no complaints about the company itself. However, there was this one thing that was weighing on me, and that was the existence of the CEO's younger brother's wife, Karen. For whatever reason, she apparently didn't like me, and she would always be watching me and constantly nagging me. However, because she was the CEO's sister-in-law, it was hard for me to say anything back to her.
Hey, Miss Harrison, just because the CEO spoke to you for a few seconds, don't go assuming that he likes you.
Huh? What are you talking about?
I'm saying, I know that you're using the position to try to get closer to the CEO that is single.
I'm not thinking that at all. First of all, the CEO is 15 years older than me anyway.
Like I said, I know you're trying to get your youth to get closer to him and try to become his wife.
I am not. How many times do I have to tell you before you understand? I am just trying to do my job. I was scouted by the CEO himself, and that's how I got the job at this company. But Karen is convinced that I am just after the CEO personally. On a separate day, Karen said,
I saw you yesterday. You spent the whole day stuck to the CEO, and you were even in his car with him. I know exactly what you're after. It's so obvious.
I wasn't stuck to him at all. Yesterday, we just happened to be visiting a client together about a new project.
I bet that's all part of your strategy, to get close to him. But I will never approve of you becoming the CEO's wife, a regular peasant like you. As part of the CEO's family, it makes me want to vomit just thinking about it.
This is an everyday occurrence where she says things like this to me. I just can't quit my job just because there's someone that I don't like. That's why I did my best to just ignore Karen anytime she spoke to me. However, she seemed to notice and dislike that as well. So she started rounding up other female employees and harassing me. One day when I got to work, the other employees were glaring at me and whispering. Is something the matter? I went over to ask them, but I was wondering why someone as young as you joined our company out of nowhere. But now it all makes sense.
You don't even have that many skills. I can't believe you were after the CEO by trying to seduce him.
At first, I was shocked to hear this, but I immediately knew who put them up to this and ran over. Karen, please stop spreading these ridiculous rumors about me.
What are you talking about?
You're telling everyone that I'm trying to seduce the CEO, haven't you?
But I'm only telling the truth. You don't even have any skills, so obviously you just lured the CEO to give you a job, didn't you?
Like I've said many times, that's not true. Please, go make it right.
Excuse me? Why should I hide the truth from my employees? If you hate it so much, then why don't you just hurry up and quit?
My blood was boiling inside of me when Karen said that. But at the end of the day, she was family to the CEO. And his younger brother was the managing director of this company. That wife was working as a manager in the company, so no matter what, I knew that I was at a disadvantage. Plus, the CEO always gave me a lot of responsibility and was counting on me.
Miss Harrison, I heard that the clients were very happy with the last project we did. They were very complimentary of your work.
Yes. They seemed very pleased. However, I think there's a lot of room for improvement. So I would like to present an additional plan to them.
I see. I'm so grateful that you chose to join our company.
No, the gratitude is all mine. But I'm glad that I could be of some use. I'll do my best.
Thank you, Miss Harrison.
Yes, sir.
What is it?
Actually, nothing. Sorry. As the day went on, harassment towards me only got worse and worse.
Miss Harrison, can you take care of this, please?
What? But this is all the work that is assigned to you.
Well, you know, we're not smart like you are, Harrison, so we can't do it.
Hey, but I can't. I have my own work to do.
But you're so smart. Surely you'll be able to do it. Well then, we'll be going home now.
You've got to be kidding me. How am I supposed to do all of this by myself? Just as I was realizing these female employees had been instructed by Karen to leave their work for me. Wait, my lip balm is missing. The other day, my pen case went missing too. If I would leave my desk for even a moment, my belongings were disappearing often. The verbal abuse was one thing, but my belongings were still being stolen a lot. I really wanted to discuss it with the direct manager, but I always see him sucking up to Karen all the time, so I didn't think that was a good idea. As I was thinking about my options, I suddenly got a letter of appointment with the HR department. Fired? What do you mean?
This was a direct order from above.
The HR department was short with me and told me to quickly gather my things and leave. I couldn't wrap my head around what was going on. But I was scouted by the CEO himself and joined this company.
This was a final decision made already.
Can I speak to him?
The CEO is currently on a business trip and he won't be back for a while.
But how can this be? There was nothing I could do, and I was promptly kicked out of the company. He said it was a direct order from above, and I was almost certain that this was all Karen's doing. But there is still nothing I could do about it. About 10 days later, as I was going through interviews with various companies, I suddenly got a phone call from none other than Karen. I didn't care what she would want from me at this point, so I was ignoring her at first. After 10 more missed calls, I decided to at least answer. Then, before I could even say hello, Karen started yelling.
This is all your fault! Everything is a disaster! You need to pick up your phone sooner!
What do you want from me now? Just as you wished, I have resigned from the company already, and I want nothing to do with you.
The CEO is furious, saying that I made you quit!
What? The CEO?
That's right, and he says if I don't bring you back, then he would fire me!
What? It turned out that after the CEO returned from his business trip, he found out that I resigned. And in his investigation, for the reason he discovered that Karen's harassment towards me as the reason I quit. Apparently, he gave her an earful, and then she found out why he recruited me in the first place. Ever since I was young, I actually had a much higher IQ than the average, and I skipped a few grades and graduated with honors at a top university. But after I graduated college, there wasn't anything in particular that I wanted to do, and I was just passing time debating whether to get a job at a regular company or to start my own business. When the CEO had heard the rumors about me, he recruited me into his company. There, it was obvious that I could swiftly create plans for new projects, but recently I had even developed a new software, and Karen had me fired without his permission. The CEO knew that there would be multiple companies after me, and immediately demanded that Karen go apologize and get me back. No thank you. I never want to work at a company with someone like you ever again.
But wait, please! Even my husband is angry at me! Please, help me somehow!
That would be impossible. I bet you're on cloud 9 and so happy that I left anyway, aren't you?
Of course I'm not happy! If I don't fix this, my life will be a disaster!
Aw, well, isn't that great for you? But that's none of my business.
No, wait!
I said my last words and hung up. Not too long after, I heard a rumor that Karen was fired from the company, before I got a call directly from the CEO himself.
I heard that my family was doing something unbelievable to you. I'm so sorry. I have already fired her and have banned her from entering the premises, so please come back! I'm begging you!
The CEO apologized over and over again. I thought about it for a while, but now that Karen was gone and was also banned from coming anywhere near the company, I gave my answer. Sure. Upon hearing this, the CEO let out a big sigh of relief.
Oh, thank goodness. Truly, I'm so glad.
I always wondered why Karen hated me so much for seemingly no reason. But it turns out, even though she was married to the managing director and the CEO's younger brother, she was actually trying to get close to the single CEO and make him hers as well. Apparently, the reason why she joined the company as a manager was also because she had her eye on the CEO. And as a secret to her husband, she was also going behind his back to try to seduce his own under his brother. However, taking advantage of the fact that she was the CEO's family, she was doing whatever she wanted around the company, and she should pay for everything she has done. She was fired from her job and divorced by her husband too. They were all living in a luxury apartment building amongst celebrities, but after the divorce, she was kicked out, and apparently, now she's living all alone in a broken down apartment. Someone told me that in order to pay for her own living expenses, she's now working part-time at some company as a janitor. Also, the female employees who followed Karen in harassing me were relegated to janitorial and/or storage unit duties, and apparently were cornered into resigning from the company as well. What goes around comes around. My name is Michelle. I'm a regular office employee that you would find anywhere. I recently moved in with my boyfriend Henry, and my life is smooth sailing right now. It wasn't always that way though, and I was carrying a difficult past with me. It all began in middle school, when I never got my period. Ever since elementary school, I was much smaller and skinnier than the average girl, and even though my friends were getting their periods one by one around me, I just assumed that I would get mine later, so it didn't bother me much. When I got into middle school, I had a big growth spurt, but unlike my friends around me, I didn't feel like my body was developing like a woman. On top of that, I graduated middle school without ever getting my period. At that point, I was starting to get nervous because it was so late. But one day, my mother asked me if my period had come yet. My mom worries a lot about everything, and I wasn't able to tell her the truth, and I immediately lied without thinking. Oh, I got my period the other day, so don't worry about me.
Really? You should have told me sooner. I'm going to make you a super healthy dinner now.
Yeah, thank you. After that, I started lying to everyone around me that I got my period. Because I wasn't experiencing it for myself, I went online to look up information so that would help me to naturally talk about it with my friends. Everybody stopped worrying about me, so it did make things easier in that regard. However, as I was looking up my own symptoms online, this time I had a new worry. In my research, an article I read said that some people who don't get their period on time may have a disease or a high possibility of infertility. As I dug deeper into it, I was overwhelmed with concern, and I decided to put my ego aside and go to a gynecologist. I was still in high school, and going to the gynecologist alone took a lot of courage. I transferred trains to get there in order to go to the clinic with a female doctor. There, the doctor spoke very kindly to me, as if I were her own daughter. When I started to tell the doctor how I still hadn't gotten my period, all of my stress exploded, and I started crying hysterically. She got straight to running some tests, and it turned out that my body wasn't producing enough hormones. My ovaries had stopped growing at the size of a middle schooler, and I wasn't ovulating either. In the end, with my number one concern, which was infertility, the doctor told me that it was very unlikely that I would be able to get pregnant. I was so shocked that I was at a loss for words, and the doctor suggested that I should speak to my mother about it. Everything felt heavy as I dragged my feet home, and my mother welcomed me with a concerned look on her face.
You're so late. Where were you? You seem a bit down. What happened?
I really wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to cry, and I wanted my mom to hold me. But looking at my mom, who looked even more worried, and even more like she was going to cry, I felt like I had to lie. I just went to hang out with some of my friends. It was fun.
Really? You looked like you had something on your mind.
Not at all. I feel great, so don't worry.
Well, if that's the case, then good. Let's eat dinner.
Looking back now, that was probably my biggest opportunity for me to tell my mom the truth. After missing that chance, I went on to become an adult, and I was still unable to tell anybody about the fact that I still haven't gotten my period. Around the time I turned 22 years old, my older sister Naomi gave birth to her baby. I always loved kids, so I was obsessed with my sister's baby. On the other hand, it only made me more aware of the fact that I wouldn't be able to experience pregnancy myself, and there was a part of me that wasn't able to be genuinely happy. My sister had come back home for a while, and one day, as my mother and I were taking care of the baby—
How adorable! It's your turn next, Michelle.
Yeah! My mother's words cut deep into my heart. I realized that everybody in the world assumes that every woman would be able to give birth, that it was a given for a female. This was the only life I knew, until a change happened to me when I turned 24 years old. I was working as a full-time employee at an office, and I got a boyfriend. My boyfriend Henry was my senior colleague in the same company. He was the one that asked me out first, but I had actually already developed a crush on him. That's why when he asked me to be his girlfriend, I was so happy that I could cry. Once I started dating Henry, my life started to feel fulfilling. He was serious about me, and we often talked about marriage. 3 months into dating, he even told me that he wanted to move in together soon. I was, of course, happy to hear that, but I was also hiding the fact that I can't have children. So somewhere deep inside, I felt guilty. Then one day, I brought Henry over to my sister's house. Seeing me shower my sister's baby with so much affection, he opened up a shocking truth right in front of me and my sister.
So, you like kids, huh? Do you think about wanting your own?
Well, yeah, maybe someday.
I see. Actually, I have to tell you that I have male infertility,
What?
so I won't ever be able to have kids.
Is that true? Michelle, are you okay with that?
I was at a loss for words and stayed quiet, and when Henry saw my reaction, he spoke again.
I'm sorry. You must be shocked, but I knew I needed to tell you sooner rather than later.
Michelle, I'm so sorry to say this, but if you're really thinking about marrying him, are you okay with never being able to have kids?
I would also like to know how you feel, Michelle.
I had been hiding my infertility my entire life, even from my own family. That's especially why I couldn't understand how he was so able to openly talk about it like this in front of me and my sister. Why did you just tell me that right now, in front of my sister?
I'm serious about wanting to marry you, Michelle. That's why I want you, and your family, to know the truth about me. It would be wrong to marry you while lying to you.
Henry.
I've never hid my infertility from anyone around me. I talk about it with my friends and my family openly like it's normal, but honestly, this is the first time I've been so scared to reveal it to someone, because if you choose to break up with me, I would have no choice but to accept it.
It was almost as though he was thinking about my feelings before his own. And before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face.
But I chose not to hide it from you, because this is the real me. Even if I'm infertile, I will still want to be confident in myself and live freely.
Henry, his words, I instantly felt the weight of the world off my shoulders, and he gave me all of the confidence to speak my truth that I had been hiding for all these years. Now please, don't be shocked to hear this. I am actually infertile too. I've never had my period, not once in my whole life. The moment the words left my mouth, my sister's jaw dropped and her hands went straight to her face. Henry, however, didn't change his expression. He just nodded his head and listened.
You know, there are plenty of people out there who marry the person that they love and are perfectly happy even without being able to have children. No matter what happens, I promise I'll make you happy, Michelle.
All I ever wanted was not to make anybody else around me worry. And all these years, I held it all by myself. He didn't judge me one bit, though, and instead,
That must have been so hard, carrying that weight all alone.
he hugged me tight as I continued to cry in his arms. When I looked over at my sister, she was also crying and came over to hug me as well. Once we both calmed down, she said we needed to talk to her mom, and we decided to go home to see her together. When we got there, my mom still didn't know any of this, and she welcomed me and my big sister with a big smile on her face. When I told her there was something I wanted to talk to her about with a serious look on my face, my mother's expression clouded in an instant. I want to tell you the truth. I actually never got my period, not even to this day.
What?
I went to the doctor, and they told me that I'm infertile. I'm so sorry for hiding this from you. After remaining silent for a few moments, my mom started crying and stood up to come hug me.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know anything. I wish I could have supported you more. That must have been so hard. But you have to know that none of this is your fault.
Hearing her words, I was so relieved and I started crying again. All I could do was regret that I hadn't told her sooner. After opening up the truth about myself to the people that mattered to me most, I felt like a new person, as I had more confidence in myself. But this was all thanks to Henry, and I am sincerely so grateful to him. Soon after that, we began our chapter of living together, and about 1.5 years after we started dating, he proposed and we were officially going to be married. We've discussed that for a while. We want to enjoy our lives as husband and wife together, but he says that if we want to have a kid,
that he is considering adopting when the time comes. All of those years I spent carrying the weight, almost feeling like a joke. Now that I am happy, lately I've even started to go to meetups with lots of women with the same position as I am. I am so much more open that I can share my experiences with those who are in the same position that I was, and to tell them that they could still find happiness, just like his words changed my life. I hope that we can help more people find positivity and confidence in themselves too. I want to continue paying it forward as I enjoy this new stage of my life. My name is Claire, and I'm a 29-year-old housewife. One of the reasons why I didn't have a job and stayed home is because I was pregnant. My husband owns a small business that organizes events, and since he is busy with work, I take care of the house. My husband's business was a startup, and things were not going well for him. That's why we had to be frugal with our spending and make an effort to make meals with ingredients that were not expensive.
Is this all we're having for dinner tonight? This won't fill me up at all. I'm starving.
I know, I'm sorry about that. Money is a little tight right now.
I'm not going to have enough energy to do my job well. Can't you make more of an effort to make nice meals for me with the money that we do have? I mean, that's like the one thing that I ask of you.
I'm trying my best. With our small budget, it's difficult to make a variety of dishes. Please understand that.
Are you trying to say that I'm not making enough money? You don't even work. You should appreciate the fact that I work so hard.
I never said anything to criticize you, and I do appreciate the fact that you work so hard. My husband and I have been quarreling like this recently. I think he is irritated that his business hasn't picked up yet, and he is taking it out on me. I understand his frustration, but instead of taking it out on me, I wish that he would tell me what's going through his head so that we could support each other. My husband was so hard on me these days that I started to get depressed. I didn't want my depression to negatively affect my pregnancy, so I went to see a psychotherapist. I wanted to improve the current situation that my husband and I were in, and so I decided to speak to my mother-in-law. I'm sorry that Alan's been giving you such a hard time. I can understand that starting a new business can be very stressful, so I don't blame him. But the stress he feels is creating a strain on our marriage. I'd like your advice on how to cheer Alan up and make him see things in a positive way. How about cooking him some hearty meals? I'm sure that if he has dinner to look forward to every night, it will make him feel better. I want to do that for him, but we don't have any money to spend on food right now. Money is very tight. You know, you don't need to spend a lot of money to make a nice meal. You'll find a lot of ingredients you can get for free. Alan's mother then told me that she would be taking me to a place where we could get some free ingredients. We took my car and drove for half an hour. We arrived at a riverside at the foot of some mountains. Are you sure that we're able to find food here? Are we going to catch some fish from the river? Take a look at the ground. Are you talking about the grass on the ground? I saw some grass that was rounded at the top. They were fiddlehead ferns, a type of edible wild plant. Growing up in the city, my knowledge about wild plants were limited. We also found butter sprouts and horsetail by the riverside. When we walked closer to the mountains, there was a bracken and fantasia sprout. I was amazed by the variety of edible wild grass. To me, they looked like delicious ingredients that I could use to make meals. I can't believe that these are all edible. The bag I brought with me today is full with the wonderful ingredients that we found and picked today. Right? I used to eat wild plants growing up. If you prepare them correctly, they are very tasty. Alan's mother told me that her husband's friend owned the mountains, and that he had generously given permission to Alan's family, allowing them to pick the wild plants growing on this piece of land. Alan's mother said that it would be a season for bamboo sprouts soon, something to look forward to. It was easy to dig up the bamboo sprouts with a shovel or rake. I began to imagine all the delicious food that I could prepare using bamboo sprouts. She'd also told me that her husband's friends used to sell the bamboo sprouts to local restaurants, meaning that they were very tasty. Alan's father's friend was getting old, and he didn't want to dig up the bamboo sprouts anymore, so he was allowing his friends to take home whatever they could dig up. Wow, so this means that we get to take home high-quality bamboo sprouts for free! That's right. I'm sure that Alan would love to eat some dishes with bamboo sprouts in them.
I'm sure that he would. Thank you for bringing me here today. I took home a big bag of edible wild plants and was excited about what I could make with them. I looked up some recipes online and started preparing some dishes. My first dish was fritters, made with different kinds of wild plants. I boiled the horsetail and flavored it with soy sauce. I brought home some field mustard, which I also boiled and added salt. As for the remaining wild plants, I cooked them with rice. It took more time to prepare the wild plants in comparison to vegetables sold at the supermarket, and I was hoping that Alan would be happy with the dinner that I prepared for him today. The dishes didn't look too great because of the color of the wild plants, but they tasted good. Now I just have to wait for Alan to come home. Alan came home as I was frying the last of the fritters. It was perfect timing. Alan seemed really tired as usual. I hope that the dinner I made will cheer him up. But things didn't go as I had anticipated. Alan, look what I made today! Your mother helped me gather all these ingredients, and they didn't cost a thing! I can't wait for you to try all these dishes that I prepared.
These just looked like they were made with weeds! Are you trying to get back at me for the fact that my business isn't doing well?
Of course not! I made the food with edible wild plants. Can you try some? I'm sure you'll like it.
Aren't wild plants weeds? I can't eat weeds! Make me something that I can actually eat and enjoy!
I was shocked because I really thought that Alan would be happy with the dinner that I had cooked for him. In the end, Alan didn't eat any of the food that I prepared for him, and he locked himself up in his bedroom. Normally, I would have talked back and tried to persuade him to listen to me, but his attitude really upset me, and I couldn't be bothered to fight back. There was still some wild plants left over for me to cook. I tried to think of more ways to prepare them so that they wouldn't go to waste. The following day, I took the remainder of the wild plants and went to see Alan's mother again. Since Alan refused to eat them, I decided to give the rest of the plants to his mother. I didn't want them to go to waste. I also decided that it was a good time for me to let her know how frustrating Alan was being to me these days. I didn't want to say negative things about her son to her, but I had no one else to turn to.
I'm surprised that Alan refused to eat these fritters because he used to love them when he was a child.
He told me that they were weeds and that he didn't want to eat any. Maybe it was the way that I prepared them. He probably doesn't like my cooking.
But you made the fritters according to a recipe, right? I'm sure that your cooking is fine. I bet Alan is taking out his frustration at work onto you, which isn't right.
Yes, I feel the same way. He's struggling with his business right now. I'm sure that his business will pick up over time. I don't know how much more of this I can take.
Let me see if I can do anything to make this situation better. I've come up with a plan. Leave Alan to me.
I'm sorry to have involved you like this. 1 week later, Alan's mother invited both me and Alan to her house. I assumed that his mother was going to lecture Alan about his behavior. Once Alan and I arrived at her house, she told us that the four of us would be having dinner at a local restaurant. Alan's mother told me that she and her family used to come here a lot when Alan was still a small child. When we arrived at the restaurant, I could see that Alan was very happy to be eating here tonight. This was the place where Alan first ate fritters made with wild plants. I think that his mother was trying to remind him of that. When he was a child, the fritters were his favorite dish at the restaurant. Alan's mother also told me that Alan was not a picky eater. He wasn't a gourmet, and he wasn't interested in dining out at fancy restaurants.
Claire, will you accompany me to the restroom before our food arrives?
Okay.
Thanks. I don't want to go to the restroom on my own, so...
I see. Let's go then. As Alan's mother and I went to the restroom, a plate of fritters made with wild plants arrived at our table. Alan and I didn't need to worry about money tonight because his parents were treating us.
Your mother and Claire aren't back yet, but you should start eating before your meal gets cold. Yes, I'll do that. This looks delicious. What Claire made me the other day was just a plate of weeds. Totally not the same. We should thank the cook for making such a delicious meal for you. Could you please tell us who made these fritters? They're very tasty.
Yes, I'm on my way.
And I was standing behind her wearing a chef's outfit. Alan finally realized that I was the one who prepared the fritters.
Claire? Why are you dressed as a cook?
I was surprised as you were when your mother asked me to go to the restaurant kitchen and make you some fritters.
The restaurant owner followed us to the kitchen. Don't you think that the fritters that Claire made for you are good? I found out about Alan's mother's plan when she brought me to the restaurant kitchen. Her plan was a brilliant one because it gave Alan no choice but to admit that he liked my cooking, even if I had gathered the ingredients that cost me little. I was so grateful to Alan's mother for proving an important point. I wanted to compare the taste of the fritters that they served at the restaurant with the fritters that I had made myself. And obviously, the one that was made by the restaurant chef tasted much better. I couldn't believe that Alan had actually thought that the fritters I made were prepared by a professional chef. Alan, you should try the fritters that were made by the chef here. No offense to Claire, but these taste much better, but to you, I guess they are all the same.
Now that you say so, these are so much better. I remember loving these when I was a young child. Actually, these fritters aren't even made with wild plants. We pulled out the weeds in the parking lot. There's a possibility that some dogs have peed on the weeds. Mom! How can you force me to eat some weeds that dogs have peed on? This is all your fault, Alan. You should have never criticized Claire's cooking. You can't seem to tell the difference between edible wild plants and weeds, so it shouldn't matter what Claire serves you for dinner. You shouldn't be so picky!
Alan continued to compare the two dishes of fritters, but in the end, Alan admitted to us that he couldn't really tell the difference between the two. To him, it was all the same. I didn't understand how he could be so dense. Even I could tell the difference, and I wasn't an expert on wild plants. I had only discovered them recently through his mother. Because of Alan's mother's brilliant plan, Alan stopped complaining about my cooking after that. I was so relieved and happy. And he stopped taking out his frustrations on me. I guess he wanted to make sure that I stayed in a good mood out of fear that I might make fun of him about what happened at the restaurant. Recently, he even compliments my cooking, which is a huge change from how he used to treat me before. I no longer feel stressed about cooking with a small budget. 2 years went by, and Alan's business was doing better. I no longer needed to go picking wild plants for dinner. Before Alan's business took off, we were eating wild plants every day to save money. I think that because Alan stopped being angry at me and blaming me for his frustrations, his positive attitude allowed him to do better at work as well. Now we are both leading happy lives without worrying about not having enough money to buy food. It's funny though, because sometimes I have a huge craving for wild plants, which is when I drive out to pick some. When I eat wild plants, it reminds me of the days that my husband and I were working so hard to make it through life. Now that we have a child together, I'm hoping that when he is older, we can go out as a family and go pick wild plants together. And I can also tell him stories about how the wild plants helped us overcome our challenges. I was working at a regular company, but recently, in the office, there was a weird rumor going around.
Hey, did you hear the rumor about the ghost? You know, that one about the woman's voice coming from the supply closet?
I heard something about it, but you know that I hate things like that, right? It really scares me, so cut it out.
That's right. Isn't it your turn to clean the supply room today? What if the ghost comes out?
Come on, I told you, stop that. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always a scaredy cat, and I especially hated hearing about ghosts and spirits. Knowing that, my best friend at work, Amy, was teasing me about it. Oh, thanks to Amy, now I'm scared to do this. I have to do it today, so I should just get it over with and go home. I was terrified the whole time, but I swiftly cleaned up the supply closet and got back to my department. Then, when it was almost time for everyone to go home, "Hey, I can't find the key to the supply closet. Does anyone have it?" And I realized that I hadn't put it back. "Oh, sorry, it was me. There's a weird rumor about the supply closet and I got scared. So as soon as I finished cleaning, I ran out of there without thinking. I didn't even lock up. I'm sorry. I'll go hurry and lock it now, and I'll give it back to you straight after." "Sure, thanks." I hurried out of my department back to the supply closet. The supply closet itself was a little far from every department office, so there were never many people around. Oh, I have to come back here again. Let me lock up quick so I can leave. I approached the door with a mission, but as I got closer, I started to hear a woman's voice. What? Oh, ghost? Are you kidding me? I was so overwhelmed with fear, but as I put my ear closer and listened, it didn't sound like much of a ghost. What? Isn't this the voice of someone in the middle of that?
and the voice itself sounded familiar to me. Wait, isn't that Karen's voice? No way. Does that mean she's doing it in there right now? At the company offices? I can't believe it. Karen was my junior colleague in the department next door, and she was famous for being quite loose and taking anyone as a partner. I was getting irritated by her inappropriate behavior in the workplace when I started to hear a man's voice on top of that. And that voice was even more familiar of a voice to me than Karen's. What? No way! Is that Thomas? Thomas was my colleague, and he was also my fiancé. The fear I had earlier was quickly gone as I felt the blood boiling inside of me. I took the key and very quietly locked the supply closet from the outside, and then messaged my colleague, "Emergency! Come to the supply closet right now!" Then after, "Please tell our boss that there's a strange sound coming from the supply closet. It might be a thief. Could you please come as quietly as possible and bring him with you?" And hit send. Lastly, I sent my colleague a message who was rumored to have started dating Karen recently and gathered everyone over to the supply closet. As soon as everyone was there, "In here! The sounds are coming from in here!" I said when my boss and Karen's boyfriend, Adam, tried to open the locked door. Then I handed them the key to please open the door and be careful. The two of them inside must have heard the commotion outside and went into a panic, but the boss was quicker and the door swung open. With the key in one hand, right in front of the boss and everyone's eyes, was a half-naked Karen and Thomas caught smack in the middle of going at it. Karen screamed, "Ah!" The boss was shocked for a brief moment, but his face immediately turned bright red as he started shaking.
What the hell are you two bastards doing? This is the company office!
His voice boomed throughout the closet and into the hallway. Karen and Thomas desperately scrambled to get their clothes back on, and
Sorry!
as they tried to apologize, but seeing that me and Adam were also there, he panicked even more and tried to come up with an excuse.
This isn't what you think it is! Please, listen to me!
What's going to happen if we listen to you anyway? There's no denying that you were cheating on me.
I chimed in. This isn't the first time for you, is it? Did you know that there have been rumors about this room lately? There is also a woman's voice coming from it. That there might be a ghost. That must have been the voices of you two doing it in here, wasn't it?
Mr. Smith, your promotion that we discussed will be returning back to a blank sheet after this. Wait a minute, sir!
That was the first time I heard anything about a promotion. But he was in such disbelief he fell silent. Then Karen butted in.
Wait, please! What do you mean you're taking away his promotion? Why do you think I've been dating you in the first place? You told me you'd buy me jewelry when you got promoted.
Even though he told me he was busy with work lately and we couldn't even go on dates, I couldn't believe that he had made that promise to Karen, and I was livid. On top of that, Karen must have been planning on keeping her handsome boyfriend Adam at hand while taking money from Thomas at the same time. You really are the worst kind of human. However, our boss spoke up first.
You've been saying some serious nonsense, but of course you'll be getting a punishment just as worthy as that.
What? Why am I going to be punished?
Obviously, this ain't your private little room for you two to do whatever you want. If you want to have sex, then go do it at a damn hotel.
He was furious and stormed out of the room. Well then, I'm sure you know this already, but our engagement is destroyed now.
This was just a moment of weakness. I won't do anything like this from now on, I promise!
Wow, you're still able to say that after everyone just saw you? But you're just afraid of the cost of damages I'll be collecting from you and destroying our engagement, aren't you?
That's not true! I love you, Michelle!
Oh really? Is that so? But what do you think my parents and your parents will say when they hear about this?
What?
I pulled out my phone and let them hear the recording I had started just before the others arrived.
You're not planning on showing them that, are you? You're kidding, right?
Of course I'm going to show them. Why wouldn't I? When I said that, Thomas went completely pale as he crumbled to his knees. After that, I did exactly as I said I would, and the engagement was called off. My parents were of course furious, but since this incident in the supply closet not only affected his promotion, but resulted in a relegation, his parents were livid. Are you obviously going to make up for the love that Michelle wasted on you? You better pay all of that yourself, and don't even think of asking us for help. and he was practically disowned by them. Of course, Thomas didn't want to pay me any settlement, so over and over he came begging to me.
Let's start over! Please, let's have the wedding! I'll do whatever it takes!
But I completely ignored him every time. Then before I knew it, he was relegated somewhere far out into the suburbs. Karen was also relegated.
Why should I have to go to the suburbs where there's nothing and no one to do? On top of that, in storage duty? No way!
She was causing a fuss and went to Adam.
I promise I'll never betray you ever again, I swear! I'll give my all to you for the rest of my life, so please, marry me! I know I can be a great wife!
She tried, but Adam was always good looking and never had any issues with women. So of course there was no way that he would agree to that. Are you kidding me? You and I are nothing now. Marry you? Don't make me laugh. And rejected her to her face. In the end, Karen didn't want to be relegated to the suburbs, so she resigned from the company. But I went through a lawyer and made sure to sue her for destroying my engagement.
Why should I have to pay this much money? It's so much! This is so wrong!
She tried to reject it and didn't pay, but in the end her assets were seized and she lost her car and all of her luxury items. Karen was left with nothing but her tears.
You took everything! Everything!
She was crying out. But that was none of my business. She did all of this to herself. As for me, after the two of them were gone, I continued working at the same company. But everyone found out that I was cheated on in the supply closet, and my friends at work were worried about me.
Don't worry. You're going to find someone amazing in no time, so don't think about it too much.
They all did their best to cheer me up, inviting me to dinners a few nights in a row and planning happy hours with some guys as well. Thanks to that, about 2 years after I broke up with my ex-fiancé, I met someone new and now we're dating. To make sure I don't make the same mistake again, apparently my friends did a lot of research into him for me.
He will be great. He's someone we can trust, so you can relax and just enjoy it. Go, be happy.
My colleagues and my friends all got behind him and me, and this time, I feel like a true happy marriage may finally be within reach. When I went to my best friend's wedding, the groom was my husband who had disappeared 3 years ago. My name is Catherine. I live with my husband Chad, and I am a 24-year-old full-time office worker. It was about 1 year since I married my husband, and I was starting to think I want children, so my husband and I were having a conversation. We were still in the newlywed honeymoon phase, and things were great between us. We were both working full-time, but we had a dedicated promise to always go on dates together on the weekends. We also never argued, and our wedding life was smooth sailing, until one day. One day, when I came home from work, I felt like the apartment was oddly clean and empty. Something felt very off, so I decided to check everything around the apartment. It didn't take long for me to realize that all of my husband's belongings were gone. A terrible feeling washed over me as I tried to call my husband, but he had already deactivated his phone. I then called my in-laws and explained the situation to them, but they told me that there's no way he would just disappear like this. So to calm down and see how things go. However, there was no way that I could calm down, so I looked everywhere I could of that might be where he would be. But I couldn't find him anywhere. And in the end, he never came home that day. Or ever again, for that matter. I was so shocked by his sudden disappearance that I continued to look for him. I kept looking and looking, but I couldn't even find anyone that knew where he might be. And before I knew it, 3 years had gone by. I had exhausted myself of tears and stopped looking so intensely. It was around the time that I had finally felt like I was regaining control of my life. The person who supported me the most through my devastation was my mother. My mother was always beside me and continued to cheer me up. Seeing how deeply depressed I was, I have no doubt that she was afraid I might take my own life. For how much I made her worry, and in order to make sure she gets to know that everything was okay, I was finally able to start smiling and laughing little by little again. Right around that time, I got some very happy news. That was a wedding invitation from none other than my best friend Kelly, who was living in Hawaii. Kelly always loved the ocean ever since she was little, and she started surfing when she was in elementary school. When we graduated high school, she said she wanted to work in some related thing to surfing, and using the money she saved up from her part-time job, She moved to Hawaii herself. Now she's a surfing instructor and has become extremely popular on social media and is a bit of a celebrity. I was proud to be Kelly's best friend. Anytime I would see her post on social media, I would message her and remember showing my husband cool photos of Kelly and bragging about her to him. Apparently, the wedding was going to be in Hawaii, so in order to attend, I would need to get on an airplane and cross the ocean. I have always been terrified of heights and had a huge fear of flying, so I truthfully debated whether I would be able to attend or not. But it was my beloved best friend's wedding, so I mustered up all the courage and decided to take an airplane to Hawaii. Kelly's family and my family were very close, so she also invited my mother, who also attended with me. I immediately picked up the phone to tell my mom, "Hello, Mom. I just got an invitation to Kelly's wedding, and she said she wants you to come too."
What? Kelly is getting married?
How wonderful! It was so amazing. I can't wait. I'm so excited to see her again.
It's been a while since I've heard such a happy voice from you, Catherine. I can't wait either.
My mom and I started running around trying to get everything ready for our departure to Hawaii. It was both of our first times going to Hawaii, so we also looked through a lot of travel magazines and studied up on the islands. The time I spent with my mom choosing dresses while filled with excitement helped to brighten my mood a lot. The day of the departure, I still hated flying, but I took deep breaths while picturing Kelly in her wedding dress and faced my fears, and somehow landed safely in Hawaii. Kelly was there at that point waiting for us.
Catherine!
Kelly! The moment we saw each other, we ran and embraced. And as we hugged each other tightly, we really felt the importance of each other's existence. We spent more than 1 hour catching up and laughing at the cafe in the airport. And I got to hear all about how Kelly met her fiancé.
About that, my soon-to-be husband suddenly appeared in front of me one day, and he came aggressively chasing after me. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, it sounds like something straight out of a movie.
I know, right? And then he said that he had no interest in surfing, but that he wanted to watch me surf for the rest of his life. How weird is that?
What is that? He sounds like one of your fans.
Maybe he actually was.
Even though we hadn't seen each other in years, in that 1 hour, we were back to our old best friend selves. And I got to talk about everything in our lives. Of course, about my husband too. When I told Kelly about my husband disappearing, she really empathized with me, as if it happened to her, and she did her best to cheer me up.
I don't know what might have happened to your husband, but it doesn't change the fact that he disappeared without saying a word. I think you should try to leave it in the past and move forward, because you deserve a happy life.
Yeah, you're right. I feel a lot more confident now. I think I can move on. Thank you. After our reunion at the airport, my mom and I went to check in at the hotel. From there, we had a blast, enjoying a tasting menu at the restaurant as our first day in Hawaii came to a close. The next morning was the day of the wedding. The venue was filled with so many people. As soon as my mom and I walked through the doors, Kelly's parents ran right over to us.
Catherine, how are you? And your mother looks great too.
Catherine! So great to see you. You look beautiful.
It's so great to see you guys too. The four of us caught up while also reminiscing on our memories together. When they announced that the wedding ceremony was about to start, finally the bride and groom were about to make their entrance, and I was so excited to see Kelly with her soon-to-be husband. The doors opened.
Please welcome the bride and groom.
I wonder what Kelly's husband looks like.
I'm sure he's a wonderful person for her.
The bride and groom's slow footsteps echoed in the hall, and as soon as they walked through the doors, both my mother and I instantly drew our breath and were covered in goosebumps, unable to move. Standing next to Kelly in a white suit as the groom was unmistakably, without a doubt, my husband Chad, who had disappeared 3 years ago. What?
Is that Chad?
I went into a state of panic, and before I knew it, I had run over to Chad and grabbed him by the shoulder, shaking him. Chad looked shocked and was speechless. Why? Why are you here? Where have you been all this time?
Catherine, why? How are you here?
What? You two knew each other? What on earth is going on here?
What does this mean? Explain yourself!
What is going on?
This man is my daughter's husband who left her and disappeared.
What did you say? This must be some sort of mistake!
My mom calmed me down as I regained my composure, and Kelly asked me to explain everything in detail, so I told her everything. If it was just me there, Chad may have been able to come up with some kind of excuse to get out of it. But with my mother there as a witness, he knew there is nowhere he could go. Chad conceived, and in front of Kelly and Kelly's parents, he admitted to the truth.
We are canceling this wedding! All of it! How dare you hurt my daughter and her best friend like this! I hope you're ready to enjoy your time in hell! I'm sorry!
Catherine, I'm so sorry! I had no idea!
It's not your fault, Kelly. I know that you didn't know. This is all Chad's fault.
Catherine, please forgive me!
You're nothing to me now. Don't even think about showing your face in front of any of us ever again.
But no!
It turns out that as I was showing my husband Kelly's posts and photos on social media, he became obsessed with Kelly. So he packed up and disappeared and moved to Hawaii. That he planned to carefully get closer to her, and even got to the point of a wedding. Apparently he thought I would have come to the wedding because of my fear of flying, and he thought he was in the clear. That prediction turned out to be beautifully wrong, and instead, at his wedding, everything he had done come to light in front of everyone. Chad must have not expected this, so for a while he stood there like a lifeless body. Kelly's parents and my mother were of course livid. The wedding was canceled, and there was a huge commotion all throughout the venue. They had already submitted their marriage certificate, but that was, of course, immediately destroyed, and Chad was left with paying the full cost of the ceremony as well as the settlement fee to me. This time, we both had lawyers on him, so he couldn't get away. The cost of the wedding was quite high, and since Chad was expecting to pay for it with the ceremony gift money from the guests, he ended up going bankrupt. He had to take out a loan from the black market lender in order to pay off the settlement fee. And I heard that he is now working a hard labor job while being chased by debt collectors every day and night. I later heard a rumor from a mutual friend that the last time she saw him, he was missing a finger. As for me and Kelly, despite the both of us being deceived by the same man, we were both there for each other and are now supporting each other to find a new relationship as we look towards the future. I also want to become happy not only for myself, but for my mom who saw me depressed for all these years. I want to be able to take care of my mother the same way she took care of me all this time. After moving on from the most painful betrayal, I feel like I can handle anything that life throws at me now. More than anything, with all of these amazing people around me who supported me through all this, I want to live a positive life as I set off to find my own happiness.
My name is Ted, and I'm just an ordinary guy employed at a company. My mother is the eldest of 4 sisters, and she's now taking care of her elderly mother. One day, my grandmother needed to be hospitalized to be treated for a condition that she had. It was decided that the 4 sisters would take turns looking after their mother, but the youngest sister was giving everyone a hard time. She never showed up at the hospital when she was needed, and she would stay home to play games on her smartphone. She wasn't busy because she didn't work and was living off her mother's money. Even if she managed to get herself to the hospital, instead of taking care of her mother, she would take the condolence gifts that people bought for her mother.
How long are you going to sit on the couch and play games? We need your help in taking care of our mother.
Why do you care how I spend my day? Leave me alone.
My mother and her other 2 sisters lectured their youngest sister and told her that she needed to grow up and act more responsibly, but my youngest aunt didn't seem to care what the others thought of her. My youngest aunt would throw a tantrum like a young and selfish child when things didn't go her way. We didn't know what to do about her erratic behavior. I wondered why my youngest aunt was being so self-centered. Wasn't she worried about her mother's health? My mother was reluctant about introducing me to her youngest sister, and so I barely knew her. It was only now that I was hearing about all the trouble that she was causing my mother's family.
Mom, I had to leave at your call. I miss you already.
I'm sorry for your loss. My grandmother died after 2 months of being in the hospital. Naturally, my mother was devastated. My grandmother was 90 years old when she passed, and so we'd been preparing for this moment, but we were still all really upset. My mother began to make the funeral arrangements. While we were all grieving, my youngest aunt was the only one that was acting like nothing had changed. She continued to be her usual egocentric self. None of us expected her to help out with the funeral, but when she appeared at the funeral, wearing a revealing dress that seemed inappropriate for the occasion, we were at a loss for words. Her sisters asked her to change into attire that was more suitable.
This is our mother's funeral. Please change it to something proper. We want you to be dressed respectfully.
Yeah, this is totally unacceptable. What does it matter what I wear? My mother is dead. It's not like she cares about what I'm wearing. You should be happy that I bothered to attend the funeral at all.
In the end, My youngest aunt left the funeral because she didn't want her sisters to give her a hard time. She ended up taking a nap on the couch at home. I couldn't believe that my aunt would miss her own mother's funeral. But perhaps it was best that she didn't take part in the funeral. We didn't want her to reveal embarrassing stories about our family to the other attendants. Once the funeral was over, our family gathered to talk about my grandmother's inheritance. My grandmother had left a notarized will that was read out to us by her lawyer to reveal its content. 60% of the deceased's savings have been left to her eldest daughter. The remaining savings will be split equally between the second and third daughters of the deceased. And the property of the deceased has been left to her grandson, the son of her eldest daughter. The moment that the reading of the will was finished, my youngest aunt stood up in protest.
Why am I not mentioned in the will? I am her daughter too.
The lawyer then explained to her that her mother had left her a letter. He read the letter out loud.
To my youngest daughter, I am concerned that you haven't felt the need to go find yourself a stable job despite the fact that you are all grown up. I need you to learn the importance of getting up and leaving the house to go to work every day. In order for you to do so, I have no choice but to leave you nothing. Please take this as an opportunity to find yourself a job and become a person that I know you can be.
After hearing the contents of the letter, my youngest aunt had a fit, and she was furious that she was the only one not getting anything of value from her dead mother.
This can't be right. How come my nephew gets her property and I get nothing? It makes no sense. I demand that I get my mother's savings.
My youngest aunt was making crazy demands as usual. Someone needed to calm her down, but I realized that my youngest aunt had been waiting for this day. She assumed that her mother would leave her something of value, and that she would be able to use her inheritance to live the remainder of her life in comfort. When things didn't go as expected, my youngest aunt panicked.
Why am I the only one being punished? It makes no sense that my mother would leave me with nothing.
This is the official copy of your mother's notarized will. There are no mistakes here. You can't do anything to refute the content.
What am I supposed to do then?
I'd heard that some families argued about their inheritance, but seeing my aunt firsthand, I was greatly shocked. She was not afraid to show her greed. But as the lawyer had told us, there was nothing that my aunt could do about her mother's will, so the rest of us received our inheritance, according to the notarized will. One problem was that my youngest aunt was currently living on the property that I had inherited from my grandmother. My mother told me that this was as good a time as any to get her youngest sister to move out.
Why do I need to move out? I'll have no place to live. You don't want that for me, do you?
My youngest aunt reacted exactly in the way that we had predicted. We knew that she would put up a fight. My mother offered her sister a lump sum of cash to get her to agree to move out. My youngest aunt agreed to move out in exchange for the money that my mother offered her.
I'm glad we were able to get her to move out. That was faster than I expected.
I agree. After my youngest aunt moved out of the house, we had the house torn down. We did this so that this would not give a reason for my aunt to come back and try to move back in. But a few months later, she paid a visit to my mother and I.
You didn't give me much money to get by. The money's all gone. What am I supposed to do now? I'm going to be staying with you guys until I get back on my own 2 feet.
My mother had given my aunt a considerable amount of money, but my aunt had spent it recklessly by staying at a hotel and ordering room service. She even spent some of the money on online games, which was absurd. After she had spent all of her money, she asked her older sisters for help, but none of them wanted to support her. I could see why none of her older sisters wanted anything to do with her. She was irresponsible and careless, and I figured that she was planning on staying with us as long as possible. She had no desire to get a job and pay for her own living expenses.
I'm your little sister. You're supposed to help me out when I'm in trouble. It's not like I'll be staying here forever. It's temporary.
I was starting to think that the fact that my mother had given her sister all that money had been pointless. I decided to give my aunt a piece of my mind. Aren't you ashamed of the fact that you're still relying on your sisters? How old are you? You should be financially independent by now.
How dare you say something like that to me? Show some respect.
My aunt demanded that we let her stay with us. In response to her demands, we told my aunt that we would call the police if she didn't agree to leave our house. Only then did she agree to leave our house. My mother and her 2 sisters had decided to cut all ties with their youngest sister, but my youngest aunt came to visit us again. My mother didn't want to see her sister anymore, so I answered the door on her behalf. Could you please stop coming over to our house and harassing us like this? You're not welcome at our house!
I came here today because I have something important to tell you.
What is it? I wondered what it could be. Whatever news my aunt brought was usually bad news for us.
I'm pregnant with your child, and I need you to agree to pay child support and any medical fees relating to my pregnancy.
This is when I realized just how crazy my aunt was. There was no way in hell that I would have a physical relationship with my aunt whom I was related to. Why would she lie about something like this? It was obvious that there was no truth to what she was claiming. I guess she really was strapped for cash. I wasn't going to put up with her ridiculous behavior anymore. I let out all of my anger. I've had enough of your bullshit! This ends here! No one in our family wants anything to do with you! You've taken enough money from this family! It's about time that you take responsibility for your actions!
Why are you acting so superior all of a sudden?
At least I have a stable job and earn money. That's much more than you've been doing. I then went over to my aunt and pushed her out of my house. I never want to see your face again. I threw my aunt's shoes out of the door and locked my front door. My aunt continued to knock on the door furiously, but I ignored her. I wasn't going to let her win this time. She had broken her promises to us over and over again, and she couldn't be trusted. I then called the police and reported what had happened. The police officers were supportive, and they told my aunt to get into their police car.
Let go of me! I didn't do anything wrong! This is my sister's house!
Stop fighting us off! You can't get away with this! Because my aunt protested and was violent, the police arrested her. After she was released, she began to knock on the doors of her family and relatives, but no one offered to help her out. So she ended up living a very lonely life. I heard a rumor that my aunt was broke and became homeless because she was too lazy to look for a job. She deserved what she got. We warned her so many times, but she never wanted to take our advice. Mom, you have nothing to worry about anymore because your sister won't be bothering us ever again.
Ted, thank you so much for taking care of this. You've been a great help.
My mother told me that there was a time that my youngest aunt had a stable job, but she had some problems with her colleagues and ended up quitting. After that, she ended up on her mother's couch and played smartphone games all day. I wasn't surprised that my aunt had problems with her colleagues at work. She was a difficult person to be around. Now that there was no risk of my aunt coming over to bother us, I decided to build a new house on the property that I inherited from my grandmother. I recently got married, so it was the perfect time for me to build a new house. My mother comes to see us quite often.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.